Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is one half of the tag team PG-13, multiple-time tag team champion, worked for the USWA, Power Pro Wrestling, the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance. Pleased to welcome the one, the only, Wolfie D. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for coming on.
Not a problem, man. Not a problem.
All right. So tell me about your childhood. Where are you from?
Nashville, Tennessee, Nash Vegas, man. Specifically LA, Lower Antioch. Me and Ricky Morton share the same area of town. Yeah, so and you know it's funny too, talking about my upbringing, really that Ricky was the first wrestler that I ever met in my entire life. He was like, I lived in these apartments, right? And me and my buddy, I pretty much just started watching wrestling, man, like getting into it really heavy. You know, it's probably 8, 9, maybe 10, probably not, but 8, 9, something like that. Me and my buddy are hanging out in the apartments, walking around, you know, and I seen this dude on a patio standing over here in my apartments with this long blonde hair, man. I said, "Buddy, that's Ricky Morton, man. That's the dude on the Rock and Roll Express that was just on TV. Just, you know, it was like a Saturday morning, you know, because it showed you film in Memphis, and then a week later it would show in Nashville, right? So he's in Nashville in the middle of the afternoon because he was going to be doing the fairgrounds that evening. So anyway, he's there hanging out, and I told my buddy, and I walked over to him and I said, "Are you Ricky Morton?" He's like, "Yeah, buddy, I am, blah, blah, blah." And then he flexed on me. And Ricky, man, you know, how Ricky's small in stature for a wrestler, but to a little kid, man, that arm knotted up. And I was like, oh my God. I ran up to my house, man. I told my parents, Rock and Roll Express Ricky Morton is down in our apartments. They didn't believe me. They didn't believe me. So I think I went back down there and got his autograph and brought it back. Then they believed me. But it's a funny story. But yeah, so I grew up in Nashville, went to Overton High School. You know, I just a wrestling fan. I didn't like school that much. I was good. I was smart, but I didn't like to go. So I skip a lot of school, but my grades stayed good because I could pass the test. But yeah, that was me, man, into Kiss and wrestling and, you know, that type of thing. Comic books. I love to draw. So yeah.
What was it about wrestling that just got you hooked at a young age?
Dude, I don't know because before that, okay, so before that, I was into like comic books, Star Wars. I loved Kiss, and it wasn't really like I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was the music, but I didn't really listen to other music. Okay, I just liked them. You know, my mom took me to see my first Kiss concert when I was 5 years old, dude. I don't really remember it that much. I mean, I have a visual, but you know, at that age, it's hard to remember. But I'd seen them. Took me a lot of times after that, growing up. It was the theatrics of it, man. The stage show, you know, the explosions and the character and all that. And I think when I saw wrestling that went together with that. You know, we had these
Mhm.
live action superheroes out there. You know, so I think that was the connection for me.
Yeah, and when you talk about pro wrestling, you talk about music, they kind of go hand in hand with each other. And yeah, it's all that theatrics, the comic books as well. It really brings together a lot of creativity.
Yeah, for sure. And I always prided myself. You know, I came up with the PG-13 gimmick. You know, kind of something new. Nobody had really done the white rapper gimmick like I did it. And so I take pride in that. And also Slash, I came up with Slash. And, you know, that was something else that I can say I took my gimmick. They didn't have to create nothing for me ever in my career. I created my own stuff and it was good enough where they went, okay, we'll take it, you know, instead of, no, let's turn you into this. That was, you know, cool. Even when we did the Nation of Domination, it was not really a change from PG-13. It was just really a change in outfit is all it was, and not much of that.
The evolution of the character.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, at that young age of 8 or 9 years old, did you know right then and there you wanted to be a wrestler?
Absolutely. Absolutely, bro. And I was very young, I was 15 when I got in the ring for the first time. I in ninth grade, I thought my thinking was, okay, I'm gonna get on this wrestling team in high school in ninth grade. And so I did. And that in my mind, that's going to be my path to pro wrestling. And yes, it does help. But, I thought, okay, this is how you do it. And yeah, in a way, that's true. But so anyway, 10th grade year is when I started training. My stepfather, a guy named Rick Reynolds, he was a friend of the family, and they took me to a ring, and they were working out with a guy named Gypsy Joe, who was the first person that I really got in the ring with, and plus them two, and we trained for a little while. And Rick showed me a lot of stuff, and a lot of my training, man, was hands on. To be honest with you, but I was lucky in the fact that when I got in at that young age, I had a lot of old timers that had been around. It wasn't like today, man. You see, you get into the independents, and you got guys out there that are young working with other young guys. It's like the blind leading the blind. They can sort of teach each other, but they don't have the experience to teach each other. You feel me? And so I was lucky in that fact, man.
It's not an easy business. It's a hard business you have to really learn and get into. And I'd imagine taking those bumps for the first time, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean that too. At the same time, remember at that age, 16, 17 years old, man, with grown men out there, that if they want to take advantage of you, because especially back in them days, that was 89, 90. I mean, there's guys that are just mean, and they'll take advantage of you, or they're trying to toughen you up, which I believe in that. You got to be tough. I mean, the business has changed a little bit, but I appreciate some of the, ass whoopings I kind of got. I needed that to toughen me up for what was to come.
Do you recall any pieces of advice your trainers gave you early on that you still recall?
Oh man. Like I said, with some of with my training, actually, there wasn't a whole lot of mentoring in that way. I mean, I know Rick wanted me to finish school. He didn't want me to even get in the ring until I graduated high school, and I didn't graduate high school. I ended up getting a GED later in life, but I quit school once I found out that I was good enough in the wrestling business to stay booked 3 or 4 days a week. I was like, peace. So, yeah, I mean, he wanted me to finish school. I mean, I didn't have a lot of, let's say, great influences, man. And I say that I did have a lot of great influences, but not people that were, look, man, don't do this, don't do that. I had more people, hey, let's go do this, type stuff. And I feel like, especially like in the bigger companies, guys have a lot better guidance, man. When I got into the WWE for the first time, I was 20 years old, I believe. The first time I showed up there, got a tryout, and then contracted, I think at 21 or maybe 22, something like that. But anyway, man, nobody could have told me nothing. Nobody was really trying, and I made a lot of mistakes uh, outside of the ring that I wish I could have been mentored on. I look back on it and I feel like that's where the business has changed in a good way. Of that, I think people are more, there's not as many party guys anymore as there was back then. And, you can get lost in that direction, especially a kid coming up that didn't have, uh, I had a stepfather, but I didn't have a father, And so a lot of these guys in the wrestling business, that I was looking up to, eh, I looked at them like father figures, and they may or may not have been setting the greatest examples for me outside of the ring. You feel me?
Yeah, I mean it's hard because you're young, you're just getting into something for the first time, you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about wrestling is you do have those friends. You do have the
Oh
people
yeah.
that you can rely on and count on and care about, and there is a lot of camaraderie.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. To this day, I mean, if you just like, I talk to guys doing my podcast, and we kind of just continued it. But doing my podcast, I've had guys on that, I never met, I never wrestled, but we became friends just from the podcast, and then like talk all the time on the phone outside of that, just because you're a wrestler, I know who you are, you know who I am. We might not have met, but we're brothers.
Yeah, and so getting to ride up and down the road with some of those guys, I mean, any fun stories that you can share, like of just having a good time?
Oh, we had a good time, that's for sure. uh, Trying to think of something that's PG, man. So let me think. Man, well, I tell you, there was something fun that we used to do uh, in the Memphis territory. They called it war. So obviously everybody's going pretty much from the same town to the same town. So you're passing people randomly sometimes on the interstate,
Hmm.
whatever. And the gimmick was to get something out of your car, food, something like that, and throw it on the windshield. So, and I tell you who was really good at it, Lawler and his son Brian. They were probably the two worst ones about it. But Brian would throw stuff like yogurt, like a little cup of yogurt. You know what that's going to do to your windshield?
Hmm.
Your wipers ain't getting that off. So that was some fun stuff, man. And just riding them down the roads and cutting up and laughing and just the camaraderie. I remember a guy named Frank Morrell, who was an old wrestler, and he was a referee in his later years, and I used to ride with him a lot. And he was driving, and so we were going from Nashville to Louisville, and it was storming really bad, and we were just leaving Nashville, and there was tornado warnings and watches and all this mess, right? So we're going up 65, and the guy on the radio, we're listening to the AM radio, and the guy says, tornado warning, tornado on the ground in Warren County. Use common sense, seek shelter, blah blah blah. So, man, I mean, it's coming down, right? And about that time, we passed. No kidding, man. We passed the sign that says Warren County. That's like Bowling Green, right? So we passed the sign. Frank pulls over onto the side of the road, but on the median side, not the right hand side, but on the median side. He pulls over, he puts it in reverse, and he starts backing up. And I mean, it's pouring down rain, right? I said, Frank, what are you doing, man? You got traffic going this way. He said, Whoopee. That's what he called me, Whoopee. And a lot of times he wouldn't have his teeth in. He said, Whoopee, the man said there's tornadoes on the ground in Warren County. And I'm not going into Warren County. I'm using common sense like they told me. He's just continuing to back up, man. Oh, it was
That's
funny. Looking back,
crazy.
it was
Yeah,
funny.
that's
I mean,
hilarious.
literally, we passed the sign, and he he pulled it over. He said the man said there's tornadoes in Warren County, so he's thinking is by backing up out past the sign, we're good.
Oh
Oh
man, but see, those are good stories to share,
yeah,
because
man.
you remember those and you're having fun with your friends, your
Yeah.
colleagues. You made your debut in the early '90s. I'd imagine you were scared at first, trying to get those first few matches under your belt.
Well, okay, so yeah, it was. I mean, I remember being nervous and stuff, especially like my third match. The guy that I said I trained with first, Gypsy Joe, my third match was against him, and he had the week before that. He literally, like a shoot, beat the mess out of this guy. He had this like legend status about him. He was big time in Japan, and I mean, he was a tough old man, and he would lay him in. He wanted you to do it. He's one of those old timers, harder, harder. When you was hitting him and shit. And so I'm like, I was kind of nervous about that, even though I trained with him. We weren't like friends at that point. Later in life, yeah, but uh, so anyway, I remember going out there, and man, he made me look so good, and he was so easy with me. And his thing was chops. Everybody was talked about his chops. He never chopped me one time. And like I said, I was like 16, and he never chopped me one time. He loved my mom, and so he took care of me out there, and I mean, yeah, there was times where I was nervous, but I always had confidence in my ability out there. Especially once I started figuring out, the moves came really easy. It was just okay, how do we do this dance? That was the part I had to figure out, and the part that the old timers could show me as far as lead me in the ring. But once I figured out how everything went, because at first the one thing that messes you up, I think, it's kind of shocking. Not so much now because there's not a lot of calling it in the ring as much. But back then, you know, you didn't even talk to your opponent until you got into the ring, you know, and most times. And so that was the thing that was hardest for me, was being able to understand what they were saying, you know, because a lot of guys are they're growling and talking at the same time to kayfabe the people. So that was, and also not to put your head down right in their ear, so you know it looks like you're listening to them. You got to learn to kind of feel shit out at the same time. So that was probably the hardest part. But as far as nerves, man, the first time I was on TV, which was Memphis, the debut, man, I know it was like I think a 10-minute segment, possibly something like that, maybe a little short, but man, it was like a flash. I don't even remember it. It was like all of a sudden we was out there, and all of a sudden we was coming back through the curtain. You know, it was just, I'm on Memphis TV. That's what
It,
I'm.
it's an exciting feeling though, because this is, you know, you're being seen by a lot of people, and
Yeah,
it's the hottest thing in town.
yeah,
And a lot of people have grown up watching professional wrestling and watching Memphis wrestling, which
right.
has its own chock full of history.
Oh yeah,
Getting to be a part of that, I mean, that is a huge deal.
absolutely, man. I'm gonna tell you something that you know recently, was it last year, the end of last year. Jamie and I were inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. That's my plaque right there.
Congratulations.
I'm pretty. That meant so much to me, man. You know, yeah, I worked for WWE. Yeah, I worked for WCW and ECW. You know, I worked for all that, but man, Memphis is what I grew up on. You feel me?
Hmm.
And to be known as one of the best tag teams to ever wrestle in Memphis means a lot to me, man. It really did. When they gave me that, it was just like, thank you. You know, that kind of seals the deal for me. You know,
How, how did you and Jamie get paired up?
man. So we were wrestling again. I met him on the independent scene, and we were wrestling against each other. They paired us up against each other quite a bit. I was Airwolf then, and he was just Jamie Dundee, and then I started doing the Wolfie D gimmick, with the shorts and everything. They weren't painted up, didn't have the graffiti on them, but I had the black shorts and sort of doing it, you know. And Chris Champion was one of my mentors and friends with Jamie, and we all hung out. And so he said, "Man," he said, "y'all ought to do this as a tag team." And so we were like, "All right, yeah, let's try it." And so on the little Tennessee Outlaw loop, we got together, and he got some shorts and all that mess, and I come up with the name PG-13. JC Ice. I mean, he come up with JC Ice, but you know, JC Ice and Sir Wolfie D, uh, PG-13, and then we just started adding stuff to it, and yeah, that's how we got together.
How did you guys come up with the raps?
That was me. Jamie will tell you that, man. He. So I mean, originally I'd never thought of. So even though, like at the beginning, right, we used to carry this album, an LP, with us, okay, and it was a Peter Criss from Kiss. It was his first solo album. Nobody bought it, so I knew no one would know the cover. You see what I'm saying? So we were like, "This is our LP, you know, this is our album, man, and it's got a gold record inside of it, you know." So we used that. That was the first evolution of the hubcap. But we would hit people with that, thinking that it's got a metal record inside of it. Uh, Chris Champion was the booker on this stuff, like I said, and he's like, find something else. And so there was a town, Shelbyville, Tennessee. The back of there, I've told this story a bazillion times, but the back dressing room and everything was like a junkyard, man. They had all kinds of stuff back there. And so we're looking for something, you know, a chain. No, no, no. There's everything. Then all of a sudden we seen this hubcap, and we tied his rope around it. And this was, you know, Flavor Flav was wearing the clock, right? So we
Hmm.
get the hubcap. We found a can of spray paint back there. We put PG 13 on the hubcap, wore it to the ring, used it for the finish, and that created the hubcap. And that kind of started changing stuff, and I didn't mean to get off. But okay, so like I said, the record, yeah, we were saying we had a hit record, but we didn't rap, So Jeff Jarrett was on a show in Kentucky, Beaver Dam, Kentucky. This was like 92, the end of 92. Me and Jamie are having a match. Jamie knows Jeff, obviously, from their fathers and history. And Jamie had a big VCR gimmick, one of the ones that recorded, right? And he says to Jeff, hey, Jeff, will you record our match and take it to your dad? And we were working like Brickhouse Brown and Pez Watley, so it was going to be a good match. And me and Jamie had got our stuff down. We'd worked together enough at that point where we had a good thing
Chemistry.
going there. Yeah. Me and Jamie had crazy good chemistry. I mean, especially later, but I mean, man, it was unreal. But anyway, so the long story is it gets to Jerry Jarrett, right? And so it was Jerry Jarrett that says, he goes, all right, I want to do, because now we got the shit. Excuse me, I don't know if I can cuss on your show. We've got our stuff all painted up now. Now it's graffitied, and it's a little more colorful and yada yada. And so Jerry Jarrett's like, can you guys write a rap? Because in Memphis that was a thing, man. Before somebody showed up, they'd play those music videos for a few weeks to build them up, right? So that was his idea. He's like, I want to play 4 weeks worth of videos before I ever put you on TV. So he's like, I need you to write me a rap. And so the first one was to Hip Hop Hooray. It was to the instrumental to that. And Jerry told me kind of what he wanted me to say and everything. And I wrote that. Me and Jamie would rehearse it in the car. Then we go back to Jarrett's house and we record these videos. 2 different ones, but they played one for 2 weeks and then the next one for 2 weeks, and then we finally debuted. But that's how that came about. It just so happened, man, like in high school, I loved rap. I don't anymore, but like in high school, I did. And so I had a little experience trying to write my own raps in high school. So that's how, I mean, Jamie couldn't have done it, and he knows that, and I'm not knocking him. We're lucky that I had that on my side, and I was good enough to be able to, I don't consider myself a rapper. I consider myself a wrestler that can do a little rapping. You know what I'm saying?
Well, growing up with wrestling and music and comic books, I mean,
Yeah.
surely there's creativity.
Yeah, and I can draw, and I'm artsy, and so yeah, I figured it out and did a little something with it. The same with the Nation of Domination rap. Cornette said, "Hey, this is what I need you to write," and so I come up with that, and yeah. So
Over the years, you guys got to work so many people during your time in Memphis. Who have been some of your favorite opponents that you got to wrestle with?
Well, obviously, Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert. We had a great feud with them that involved, heck, Tommy's mom and my stepdad. And I mean, we shaved our heads. We did so much crap in that angle, man. That was awesome. And then, and that really got us over, as far as baby faces. Also, the Eliminators, because this was before they went to ECW. They were the tag team champions of Memphis, and that was the first time that we came back. We had been in Mexico, and we came back and we beat them, and that was a good deal. Obviously the Eliminators went on to do big things. The Rock and Roll Express, I mean, for sure, because it was kind of like they passed the torch to us for the Memphis deal. Not to say that Tommy and Doug didn't really get us over, but the Rock and Roll Express match in Louisville on the Night to Remember, it was billed as the team of the 80s versus the team of the 90s, and for them to put us over on that big of a stage, it really did us justice. And I'm forever grateful to both of Ricky and Robert for that. But yeah, man, there's been a bunch, some I can't even remember,
Yeah, I mean, got to work so many different teams and
Heavenly Bodies. Man, God, I mean, there was so many that went through that it's just hard to remember everybody.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a legacy that you created. You mentioned you got into the Hall of Fame in Memphis. That's a big deal. And you also you also were got to be in OVW as well as Slash as part of the Disciples of Sin. How did that all come about?
So, man, I had a car wreck. Well, I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat. Well, it was a Explorer, like a Ford Explorer. and I was in the back, man, and laid down asleep. We had the guy that was driving and the guy that was in the passenger seat. They were just kind of yeah, kind of marks that wanted to be in the business and wanted to hang out with me and stuff, and good guys and everything. Um, but they weren't that experienced with the kind of travel that we did, man. And they picked me up in Nashville. We did a show in Georgia that night, drove back to Memphis from there, which was a haul. Went out that night, clubbing. I didn't go to sleep. I don't think they did either. They might have a little bit, but did TV in Memphis, Power Pro, then had to head back towards Nashville to do Nashville that night. And brother fell asleep at the wheel going back to Nashville. Went off the side of the road, flipped like 4 times. I got shot out the side window. Yeah, so that was a big deal, man. So at that point, and that was when Jamie and I were working for WCW too. So it kind of crushed me, because I couldn't obviously go right back to work. I didn't have major injuries, but like for a week, I couldn't hardly roll over in bed. My wife had to push me basically. Um, anyway, so I don't know, something in that told me to shed the Wolfie D gimmick. I just felt like it had run its course. A hubcap at that point, didn't really mean anything. They were almost becoming obsolete. I remember sitting at the gimmick table one time, and this little kid walks up to me and he goes, "What's that?" That's when it dawned on me, hubcaps, the only hubcaps on cars are plastic. They're not metal anymore. So even me hitting somebody with nobody's really getting it anymore, right? And plus, John Cena is around now, and uh, even though I did it first, or we did it first, however you want to say it, he's on a bigger stage, and so I got people on indie shows going, "Oh, John Cena wannabe." It's like, oh no, I don't think so. So I thought it was time to shed the gimmick. So the car wreck and that thought kind of went together, right? So I come back to Power Pro, still being called Wolfie D, but I got a white contact in my eye and a slash across it, right? The scar. And that thing looked real, man. I can't tell you how many of the boys thought that. Now, maybe they didn't believe the boys didn't believe the eyeball gimmick, but they believed that scar. A lot of them, I swear to God, they did. They thought that was from the car wreck, right? So it just worked out perfect, right? So I got this eye, I got this scar. Then I start thinking more about it, and I come up with this idea of Slash Killings, a serial killer guy. He carries a knife, and that was my first incarnation of Slash. But when I talked to Cornette, he's like, "I like the name." He said, "But drop the killings. Let's just call him Slash." And I'm like, "Cool." So that's how that got going. And so I went up to OVW, and you talk about paying your dues, buddy. I was already in the business 10 years almost. Let me see. Yeah, I was in the business 10 years, okay? I had to get from Nashville to Louisville to do TV for OVW, right? I didn't have a car at that point, and I took a Greyhound bus every Wednesday. You're talking about a dude that had already been in the business and made a name for himself as PG-13, taking a Greyhound bus every Wednesday to Louisville, and they'd pick me up. I'd stay with Cornette, and then my wife would come get me the next day, when she wasn't working, and bring me back home. But that was how much I wanted to rebrand myself and do it again.
It's the sacrifices, it's the hardships of wanting to be a professional wrestler. It takes
and you
so
also
much work.
you have to remember, man, at that time too, you had Batista and Orton and Shelton Benjamin and all these guys, man. I don't hold a grudge for this, but I'm just saying the mentality. I'm riding a bus and I'm getting paid a lot less than you are, and they're up there. They got their apartments paid for. You know what I'm saying, brother? That's like, whew.
But you got to work with these guys early on in their careers. I mean, what was it like being a part of that?
Yeah, I mean that's cool and all, but at that I wasn't thinking of it that way then. I'm wanting to get my job back. I'd already been in the nation.
Right.
I wanted to go back as Slash, and I did shoot myself in the foot on that because they were looking at me. I did Slash work for WWE a couple of times on some loops, a couple of TV matches actually, but they said, Jim Ross came to me at OVW and he said, "Kid, we're looking at you again." He said, "Don't shoot yourself in the foot." Well, Just so happened that they put me on a loop, and I probably had a little more fun than I should have. But I still went out there and performed and did my job, and nobody could tell any different. But it is what it is.
What was it like being around Dave Batista and Randy Orton and all those guys?
Honestly, man, I didn't really hang with them. Batista was on my, he was in the Disciples of Sin, but it's like I'd see him at the building, obviously, little talks or whatever, but I didn't live in Louisville, so I didn't really hang out with them. I don't have a relationship with any of them. And it's not that, I was any better than they were, or vice versa or nothing like that. It's just, I'd get there, do my thing. And then, like I said, I'd spend the night at Cornette's house and then I went home.
It's crazy to see, 20 plus years later, how Cena and Batista become mega movie stars.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I was just watching one last night. Have you seen Jackpot with the same?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
really good. That was really good, man. But yeah, it is. It's crazy. The Rock, all these guys, man, that I had matches with, and people go, did you know they were going to be that good and stuff? And my answer is usually no, I didn't, because I don't think it's something you can really predict. I mean, Orton, of course, the family history, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's an advantage there. He's really good. But I mean, yeah, you could look at that and go, yeah, he'll probably get, same with Rocky. Batista, they sought him out. He wasn't somebody that came looking for wrestling. They came looking for him, a power lifter guy and all that. So it's you might go, oh, I mean, they have an advantage, but as far as just are they going to be a megastar? I think that's really hard to predict, man, because there's too many variables to it.
Yeah, and I think that the cream always rises to the top, but
Yeah,
getting to share the ring with those guys early on in their careers, I mean that is a feather in your cap to have that, being a part of it, watching their careers go up and
yeah,
rise.
yeah. My buddy that so I sold cars for a while once I kind of retired or whatever. And one of the guys that I worked with, he's like, "Man, you're the only dude I know that pinned Brock Lesnar." It's kind of funny if you think about it. It was an OVW match that he, after he met me at the car lot and figured out my story and stuff, he looked me up and he's seen this OVW match where there's a 3 count with me on top of Lesnar for an angle or something. And I think it was actually a reverse decision, but we won't tell him that. But so he used to always think that was funny. Tell her, like, yeah, he pinned Brock Lesnar.
Let's switch gears now and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of wrestling. I know you've done a lot of charity work and have volunteered outside of the business. What kinds of things have you done to help out in your community?
Well, this community that I live in, not much. I haven't lived here but only 5 years, but in Nashville and in Knoxville and things like that, man, I've told you, and it's been no secret, and it'll be in my book that's coming out here in about a month, and it's going to be called The Tale of Two Wolves. Um, you've heard that story, The Tale of Two Wolves, right? Which wolf do
Yes.
you feed? I fed both of them. So that's why I titled my book that way. And my last name is Wolf for a shoot. So, um, man, so I've done things that I'm not proud of, man, but I've also done things that I'm proud of in recovery. Am I in recovery now? My answer to people is I don't bat 1,000. I do the best I can every day, right? Um, but there have been times where I've been to schools, I've been to youth places. They want, because all these people that are in the recovery stuff and all that, they're like, man, you got a very colorful story and people will listen to you, and they do. I can as soon as you start talking, this is my story, and I was a wrestler, and I got involved in this, and this happened to me, and now I'm this, and blah blah blah. They'll listen to you, and I enjoyed doing that for people, man. I really did. I really enjoyed doing that. But at the same time, if I'm not batting 1,000, I'm not going to be that hypocrite that's going to go out there and tell you to do this if I'm not batting 1,000. And when I say I'm not batting 1,000, like I said, that don't mean I drink every day. but it don't mean that I don't drink every day. You know, I might do it every once in a while, but I feel like in order to go out there and continue to do that stuff, you got to bat 1,000. And I've just never been really good at batting 1,000. I think moderation for me is the answer at this point in my life. So, yeah, man, I've done I've done Meals on Wheels. I went to the little kitchen there and prepared meals for people and all that kind of stuff and done some public speaking, like I said, for people in recovery or I remember one time we went to a thing, and this was back in the USWA days. We went to a school, just about just say no, and in a way that was hypocritical at the time because you know we we weren't really saying no, but I also knew the ins and outs of it, and I could tell you what not to do, if that makes sense, man.
Yeah, and life is a struggle, and
Oh, it's a
everybody
battle.
everybody makes mistakes, and the
Yeah.
important thing is you learn from those mistakes and do your best to not repeat them. Nobody is perfect, but if you try to spend every day at a time working on yourself, it goes a long way.
Listen, man, I wake up every day and just try to be the best person that I can be. I might be a lot of things. People might say Wolfie D is this or Wolfie D is that. But I think at the end of the day, most people say, well, Wolfie D will be straight with you. He's not going to bullshit you. He's not going to lie to you. And he's a good friend. I try to be a good person. And for me, that's what it's about, man. I was raised in the church. I used to go every Sunday and every Wednesday, man, with my grandparents, and then a different family that used to come pick me up and take me all the time. I learned a lot of good stuff in church, man. I don't go to church anymore, but it's not because I don't believe in God. So let's get that straight. Uh, but I just believe there's a different power in the world, and I don't think it has to be on Sunday mornings with everybody else. That's my feeling on it. You can do all that yourself. I just believe, man, be a good person, man, because that's really, to me, that's what the Bible's all about, in my opinion. Okay, this is my opinion, man. The Bible is a moral guide to life. Okay, all different religions basically say the same thing. To me, it's be a good person, be a good neighbor. Don't screw people over. Just don't be a shithead. Basically, is my message to people. Don't be a shithead. There's no reason to be a shithead.
Was there a particular time or event that you participated at as far as helping others that gave you the most joy?
Oh, let me think. I know I'm forgetting something because I feel like there really is. But man, honestly, I think when I was batting 1,000 at certain times in my life, and I could share that story, especially with younger people, when I could share that story and see them just locked in on me and locked in, uh, that probably brings me the most joy to help people because, man, I've been through some crap, man. I've been through some stuff that I wouldn't want to wish on nobody, man. Um, and that life will lead you there, man. And so if I can help somebody not go through that, that's awesome to me. You know what I mean? And I consider myself very lucky. I think back on some of the people, the places, the things like that. Like, how am I even still here? And so yeah, if I can keep somebody from going down those roads, man, that brings me happiness.
Never too late.
Yeah,
You just have to really find that motivation to keep going.
yeah, for sure, man.
Now, you had mentioned earlier you had a podcast. Talk to me about how you got started with it.
A guy named Jimmy Street, my co-host, just hit me up one day. I kind of knew him. We had met on the independent circuit in Nashville, around the Nashville area, and he's like, "Man, I want to do this, blah blah." And I had never listened to a podcast in my life, and I said, "But sure, we'll give it a shot here." And 4 years later, we pretty much just closed the doors a couple of weeks ago, man, because it just gets, and you'll figure this out. It gets tough, man. And I'm in the business, and I have been for a long time. And once a week for 4 years, trying to find a guest every week uh, is very hard. Because that's what I told him. I said, I'm running out of friends and favors, man. So it just got to where it just got to be I think we just mutually decided that it's just a little too much, but it was fun, man. And I invite anybody to go check it out. It's still on all the platforms in our archives. It's on YouTube, it's on Apple, Spotify, all that. Live and in color with Wolfie D. Check it out. Man, so many great guests, and I appreciate every single one of them for doing it for me, you know?
Do you have a favorite one?
Oh, heck no, man. Heck no. There's no way. I mean, out of all the great people I've had, cause a lot of them I know, but then there was guys that came on that I didn't know, just knew through others and things like that. And no, I cannot, absolutely not single one person out as the best show. No way.
Well, I think it's cool that you have a platform, be able to share your story and talk about it with others to kind of prevent them from going down that path. So whether it's a
Yeah.
podcast or a book, being
Yeah.
able to do that, it really it means a lot to be able
Yeah.
to show people that you don't have to live your life like this. You could live it in a totally different way that's drug free, alcohol free, and
Yeah. You can. You can. You absolutely can, and looking back, man, it's that question of do you have any regrets? Man, if I say yes, then a lot of the opportunities would not have been opened up for me. I lived the life I lived for a reason. And I made the mistakes I made to not make other ones. And it all plays off of each other, man. Life is a journey. And like I said, I'm lucky to still be here, but I really wouldn't change anything. I would. You can look in hindsight and go, yeah, you shouldn't have done that there, this, that. But man, it is what it is. Who's to say if I would have stayed on the straight and narrow at a certain point and got this big giant contract, but then my demons took over again and I've got thousands upon thousands of dollars. Who's to say I wouldn't have killed myself with, alcohol or drugs or something? And I was never a big drug addict. I want to get that clear. Alcohol was always my thing. But who's to say I wouldn't have died in a DUI so I think everything happens for a reason, Maybe I didn't get that giant contract because God needed me here today, I don't know. I don't have any regrets. I had a blast and I still have fun.
do you keep up with the wrestling scene today at all?
A little bit, man. In the past year, I probably watched more wrestling than I did in the past 10, 20 years. But it's because they had I like the whole WrestleMania thing from last year and the build up for that. And they did good with that. They've kind of lost me here lately, but I see a lot of clips on social media more than I'll sit down and watch a show. I watched Raw, especially when it first came on Netflix. I was watching that like every week. But now I have stopped. But I will watch the pay-per-views. Or excuse me, what is it now?
Premium
PPE?
live events,
Yeah, PLE,
PLEs.
PLE, PLE. So yeah, I'll watch those. But and WWE is about the only thing I'll watch. Yeah.
Who have been some of your favorite wrestlers to watch nowadays of the current era?
Oh, let's see here. Let me think who all there is. I honestly, man, a lot of the girls to me, I like better than a lot of the guys. I love Rhea Ripley. There's a lot of talented chicks right now. It's just different, man, from when I was in the business. The chick wrestlers is now as opposed to then are just different, man. Like the only one that you really brings to mind is like Sherry, Sensational Sherry. When she was in the ring, she worked like a dude, man. And now these girls, they work like dudes because I used to hate women's wrestling. When I was in the business, I hated women's wrestling. Even when I was a mark, I hated women's wrestling. But yeah, it's different now. But yeah, there's a lot of good talent out there. I think Seth Rollins is really good, man. His in-ring stuff is really good. I mean, Punk's good. Drew McIntyre. Um, Trying to think here. I think Cody's good, although it's a little forced to me. I mean, he's over, no doubt. But some of his stuff seems a little forced. But maybe it's getting better. I mean, I hate critiquing anybody that's way better than me or doing way better than me. I don't want to say better than me, but doing way better than me. I don't like to critique that because it's like, well, look at them and look at what you did. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's forced. who else is there? Who, I just had him in my head. Who was I just thinking of? I can't remember who I was thinking of. Name some names for me.
You mentioned Roman Reigns.
Yeah, Roman's good. Roman's good. Roman's over. Oh, I know who I was going to say. I really like Gunther. I really like Gunther, man, and I like the way they did the old school heat with him, with getting the color on the brother, and all that stuff. That was really good. I really like him. I really thought that I know why they did it, but I really wish they would have kept the belt on him and let Jay get beat again, and then maybe come back later and do it, and then let him have it. But because I think everybody saw it coming, so I really think they should have swerved him. That's just my opinion. But and I don't, it's a kid thing, and kind of like my gimmick, man, the PG gimmick. The kids love the yeet and all that. I just don't think he's that talented in the ring. But again, that goes way back in this business too. You really don't. It's about, can you draw money? Can you get popular? Can you make the people buy your merchandise? That type of thing. And can you talk them in the building? Even though he's really not that good of a talker, they're with him, man. They're with him. And a lot of it has to do with that and the music. I mean, honestly, it's his music and his entrance is over more than anything. And that just shows you how crazy wrestling can be, man. Of what this is what works, and this is what's selling money, is basically this guy's entrance. That's, again, just my opinion, but I mean, because you've seen he I don't think he's that good in the ring. Again, I hate to critique it, but you asked me the question, I tell you.
I think wrestling is in a good place right now because you have different alternatives, you have different companies,
Yeah,
and it's starting to really see uh, you're starting to see a boom period, and I think that's really good. And hopefully that boom period can be sustained because we need several outlets out there for people to work and wrestling schools for people to go to and train and learn. And hopefully that continues on, getting to see more of that progression going. Because I think the Attitude Era was wonderful. You had the Golden Era with Hogan, and now I think you can have another era where you
yeah,
see a lot more things going on. So I'm very optimistic about the wrestling business.
yeah. And I hope it's. I mean, I love wrestling, man. Obviously, or I wouldn't have done what I did and got to go all the places that I got to go. And I often wonder, if it wasn't for wrestling, what would I have? What would I have done? What would I have been? You know, just some guy working a 9 to 5, and who knows, man. That's and that, to me, going back to making mistakes and stuff, to me, that would have sucked way worse than doing what I've done and having made a lot of mistakes, and then just being where I am now. I would, God, that sounds awful. uh,
Well, you're able to tell your story. You've had an incredible career, and as we're talking here, you've learned so much. You've gained a lot of knowledge, and you're passing that knowledge along to the future, to the next generation. So, kudos to you for being able to do that. Wolfie, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to Wrestling with
yeah,
Heart.
man.
It means a lot to me and to my listeners and to my viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find out more about you on social media, how they can get your new book and check out the
Yeah,
archives of the podcast and everything?
yeah. So, like I said, you can go to YouTube, Live and in Color at Wolfie D. That wasn't our main platform because we were an audio only show, but it's still on Apple, still on Spotify, still on YouTube. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can go listen to that. As far as the book goes, I don't know what the link is going to be yet to buy it, but we're like a month out from release, I believe. So once I have that information, and you follow me, so you'll be able to see that and share that with your listeners. Maybe I can come back on and
Yes.
do a little quick book.
Do a part two.
Yeah, yeah, and to talk about where they can get the book at. But until then, I'm on Facebook. It's under Warren Wolf, and then I think it says Wolfie D in parentheses or something. But yeah, they can follow me there. I'm not big on X. I really never liked it, but also I have trouble getting the followers on there, whatever, for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not popular. So pretty much Facebook for me is where it's at. So if anybody wants to hit me up on there, I'll be glad to let you know how to get the book. You can follow me there, and once it releases, I'll have all the links and all that good stuff.
All right. Well, Wolfie, we'll have you back on again as the book comes out and everything. So you're more than welcome to come back.
All right, buddy. Appreciate your time, bud.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Take care.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.